Well, this is going to be our last session for the Regenerative Business Incubator of 2022. More to come. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. It wouldn't have been the same without your presence here, each and every one of you. And to those of you here with us online and those of you watching in the future, thank you. I would love to just drop us in with a moment of silence. To clear the space, to receive the wisdom for this session. Beautiful. Could we invite Diana to join us? In our workbooks, there is a reflection piece. I spoke to the first paragraph of this, speaking about mindful resilience and about, this was based from an activist perspective, and I shifted that. I believe we're all activists. We can use our language around these things, and maybe that word doesn't resonate for you, but we are activating the change. And so it just really ties in a lot of pieces. So I just invite at some point for you to really reflect on this piece. So I believe we are going to have Deanna and Francisco joining us from San Jose.
Very good.
Yay! I'll go over here. So happy to have you joining us. I am going to just really allow you to lead us through this. And we have a little less time, about 45 minutes. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, we can't hear you yet.
Okay. Aló. Una, dos. Hola, hola. Hola, hola.
Yay. Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for being here and being open and willing to have this conversation. I know this concept of neo-colonialism sometimes could create certain triggers or, can be awkward. But I would love to invite us all to have our lenses of observation rather than just like judgment or, definition of one side or the other. Let's go outside of that space and invite us all. I want to invite us all to explore the concept and have this conversation with open hearts and the best intentions to co-create possible solutions. Want to say something?
Yeah. So Jan and me, we have a ton of foreign friends that have come to Costa Rica, become Costa Ricans, or develop their life and their business here. And so we've had the joy of connecting to this international community that are currently living in Costa Rica, and we've heard so many times this sense of guilt of them kind of like realizing that they have, in one way or the other, created the phenomenon of neo-colonialism. And in the other hand, we also have a lot of Costa Rican friends, very simple rural people, which they live in these communities that became a hotspot of foreign influx of new locals, and they also have some resentment and difficulties with the way that many foreigners have come to their communities and basically created an isolated bubble. And they oftentimes feel that, like they say things along the lines of, we appreciate that they bring permaculture and ecological mindset, which the local Costa Ricans don't have necessarily. But they close the gate, and then we never know what happens inside. We're not involved. We're not connected to any of the activities. So all that good stuff that is happening inside the farm is disconnected from the local community. And so our kind of like our rural Costa Rican friends are also resenting that. And we feel that we have this very unique position where we're kind of bridging both two worlds, because we're Costa Ricans, we connect with a lot of farmers, and at the same time we have a lot of foreign friends. So we can observe this phenomenon. So in preparation for this talk, we Googled, and we're like, okay, like this term is thrown around so much, so what is neocolonialism? And basically what we found was that after the colonial countries, like the United Kingdom or France, when the colonies became independent, so during the colony, the dominance was made through military means. It was made by force. But when the colonies became independent, the colonial powers, these countries, basically took advantage of these newly born developing countries through economical and political superiority. So they basically leverage their strong position to have like an excessive advantage. So now this term is, the term actually came to describe a phenomenon of countries. But now, like this term is used for foreigners coming into in this case to Costa Rica, and using their power in terms of economics and network and whatnot to take excessive advantage and not giving back enough, or not being perceived as if these foreign people are giving back enough to the country. And when we think about our friends, we can say that, we have friends like Itai that you met yesterday. He's Israeli and his wife is Colombian, and they would be in a position where they potentially could do it, but what they're doing is giving a service to the country, which is amazing. They are, they're creating a beautiful business. They are integrating locals. They are taking care of their employees. They're doing so much for Costa Rica, and I'm confident to say that Costa Rica is a better place because of them. So this conversation is about those cases that we've seen friends that even with the best of intentions have not behaved like Itai and Melina, and they've in our eyes have overused this position of privilege to take excessive advantage for themselves and not giving back enough. So what I would like for us to discuss is, like what does it mean to you? Like when you think about neocolonization, what does that mean? And after that, maybe we can do like an exercise of contrast and see, if neo-colonization is this, then what is the alternative? And what can we do to bridge, these two cultures coming together in a way that is mutually beneficial, where we all win? And I can assure you, and I'll let you talk now, but I can assure you that we have a lot to give, and I know that you have a lot to give. And so how can we put together these offerings, these gifts that we're bringing into the service of all of us and all human and all living beings, in fact.
So the invitation right now is more than us extend ourselves and over-explain this. I would like to first send the invitation and the question of how can we describe neocolonialism? So we go from individual perceptions of the concept to have like a common description of what does it mean. So if anybody wants to volunteer and mention what does neocolonialism mean for you, please go ahead.
You're able to hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I can. Oh, okay. So for me, the first sign is not learning Spanish. There you have kind of the vibration of that, because I've seen communities here, old ones, and many foreigners, and they're like a bubble, right? A bubble that doesn't communicate with the surroundings. And the first sign is that they don't learn the language. That could be one element, right?
I would say not integrating, like having a bubble of entirely people from another place within Costa Rica, rather than just being part of what already exists. I think, in particular, one thing I notice is people coming here and saying we're going to make the new world without taking a look at what already exists.
I'll jump in. Part of this, for me, the way I think about it is that certain regions or areas have natural resources. And to me, neo-colonialism a lot has to do with displacement, coming in and, using those resources, creating systems that then benefit you, that don't take into account the people in the systems that were there before. And so it has an element of exclusion, right? People coming in and reopting, the funnel of energy into themselves at the exclusion of the people who have been
there. And interesting. The only people I hear bring up colonialism is like foreigners, a lot. But I guess what it is for me is like where it stems from. Alexander the Great conquered armies and forced alignment with anybody else who would align, which led to the uniting of Rome, to Britain, and then that spread out to anybody who Britain connected with. So it was a forcing of one's ways while wiping out any opposition army. The forcing thing, I feel, is needed for it to be colonialism. And what it's not is following your spirit to a soil that feels like home and following your dream and allowing others to play in your dream without worrying about how people are going to take it. Like not taking over, but like fully following your dream and inviting those to come play in that dream, not colonialism. Thank you.
I want to say as well, like part of the, this word for me means not being connected with the environment, just green plants and trees and environment that is not from here, and not using that kind of resource. And as well, getting to know how locals interact with that environment to learn and integrate those learnings Or that wisdom?
I would say like prioritizing one own's like vision, value, and voice over the vision, value, and voice of the people that live there and are of that community already.
Yeah, I think the colonialist practice has a lot to do historically in all of its different phases with this idea, like you're saying, creating bubbles, but it's more just coming in and, yeah, creating, like you said, the vision of New Earth without connecting with the earth that's there, without taking the time to practice the first permaculture principle of observe. Before interact, we see that it's a lovely climate. We see that things grow, and we see that we're comfortable there, and that it's one of the few Central American countries that we can that we're invited to easily do business, buy land, do our things. So we see a lot of the welcoming and nurturing and comfortable factors in relation to ourselves, which is good. That's fine to attract us here. Once we get here, though, it's important to continue observing and to interact. And that's where I think the flow breaks down, because the communication barrier is it's not the neo-colonialism that's being imposed on, say, the permaculture movement gets the heavy rap, which is hilarious because there's a tremendous number of foreigners that move here that aren't trying to benefit anybody. They're here to retire. They're here to take their retirement checks or their pension or their whatever it is that they're getting to sustain themselves. They just want an easy life. They want to watch their TV and go to the store and say thank you to the checkout lady instead of gracias. And they just want to live the way that they lived in their culture that they came from. That, for me, is something that embarrasses me. It's something that makes me wonder, why aren't they trying to connect? Because one of the things that attracts many of us to Costa Rica is that it's such a welcoming society. It's such a curious society. It's the one country in Central America that wasn't war-torn by the United States through the 80s and 90s. And it's the welcoming feels good, but it's not, like you're saying, reciprocated. Because of ignorance, because of shyness, really, it's not intentional. It's shyness. I don't know the language. I'm going to hide from that fact rather than go through the challenge of rising up through it. And so there are the majority of foreigners in this country, the vast majority of foreigners in this country are here enjoying the good life, not really contributing much. I do find it a little awkward that it's the people that are waving a flag of trying to do something that are the ones being called hypocrite and that are getting this label. And it's true. Many of those same people aren't trying to integrate. They're not trying to interact. They're not trying to connect with, learn the language, invite in. And part of it, again, isn't malicious, it's ignorance. It's because they don't have good examples for how to do that. They don't have guidance. And so I think the topic itself is worth looking at. What is it? How can we rise up through it? But I think it's also important to diffuse some of the misplaced blame for it if we want to get through it. because the blame, the shame, finger pointing increases resistance. It increases crawling into the bubble. It increases an ignorance. It perpetuates it. It's not an inviting thing, and it needs to be a co-inviting that's happening. And it's true, a lot of the word neo-colonialism is thrown around by foreigners. And I think it's a defense against their own lack of integration and blaming it on others who are at least trying to say that they're doing something and just saying, well, you're not doing good enough. How can you say you're doing something? So it's a very complex situation. And it is one that all of us need to take responsibility for. And I think the greatest way through it is to create more precedents, recognize when we are transcending the pattern, and not necessarily brag about it per se, but certainly let it be known and create our example or use our examples of integration as encouragement for integration. And I'll open up into the circle maybe an uncomfortable or unpopular thought that it is a two-way street, this lack of integration. That there are many Costa Ricans who like to rest in that blame and choose not to come when they're invited. And that is not a blame. It might be a call to action for us to find more creative ways, more effective ways to invite.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you all for sharing your thoughts. I see Thomas wants to add something, so I want to also give the opportunity for him to share, and then I'll convey everything you said.
While we wait to pull him in, I pulled a card to ask about this question, and the card that came up was the curse, which refers to the limiting stories of our ancestors and the karma from former lifetimes that preordains the events of our life. And I think, as Diana so beautifully demonstrated to us in the session before this, and how this group has so beautifully demonstrated our understanding in the responsibility we have in ourselves to heal this ancestral pattern, to ignite that change, whether the local Ticos are able to invite themselves into that container or not, it is really our responsibility to assist with this transformation and this healing. So, just not even subscribing to this idea of the neo-colonialism, because we are creating a new paradigm for better life for all. So, thank you.
First time I ever heard here.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Deanna, and then ideally Thomas will pop on in a moment or when you're done. Next question.
I have something to say.
Go ahead. I'll grab you.
Thank you. So it is about, for me, neo-colonialism as well. It has to be with the economy.
Yeah.
How the economy interact within the locals as well, compared with the exodus of foreigners that coming to bring a new way of economy, and how, I've been seeing people paying for the same job, different amount of money for the same job, because the difference is like there's a Costa Rican or a foreigner, and the foreigner is more familiar with gaining more money than the Ticos.
Yeah.
And for the same job, in the same situation, paying a difference is like kind of painful to think about it. So yeah, I think it's important just to bring that topic. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I just want to say, how I find it a complex matter, and how I see, for Ticos, even Ticos, how we have, it has happened like so many generations ago, how we have misplaced the indigenous people of here, and it's just following patterns. And yeah, not an excuse in any way, but what I hope for is how we can be ourselves just indigenous to the earth, and how we can sow a path of how to connect with what is there, even if we go to some other place, some foreign place, whatever country, but connect and respect and understand the wisdom. And yeah, I wish also like more ticos will open up to connecting to Earth. And some foreigners come here and do a better job in that sense, and should be also called up for attention for ticos. But yeah, I mean, it's just there's just a lot of in our mind shift that is going on, and not everybody's following through. People, foreigners, or whatever, they're just consumed anyway by whatever the TV and following our patterns of dominance, and that's pretty much a word that sums it pretty well: dominance, and how we just accumulate and go and do as we please if we have enough power and have accumulated or inherited power through money. And just because we come, or people come from some countries, it's just easier. It becomes easier for them to come here with this dominance of wealth. And if many ticos just had the chance, they will be doing similar too. Or there are many wealthy ticos that they don't give a crap about anything anyway. So it's just similar patterns, and yeah, we just have to feel all of this. Yeah.
Thank you.
So two pieces. One part about some of the older foreigners, expats who come, right, and then retire here and don't learn the language, and realizing that, and this is not an excuse, just acknowledging that the learning of language is so much easier when we're children than when people are much older. And I'm also wondering, how can we make learning the language easier and more inviting for elder, for people who come in who are older, is my first question. How can we make that more possible for them with that awareness? And I would love to hear from the ticos and ticas, what would you love to see? So, for example, with older people moving into the community who may not speak Spanish, what would you love to see happen? Or what would you love to see economically? What would be truly awesome to see happening? Pick your arena of awesomeness.
Thank you, Diane. Okay, so sorry, I thought.
That's a question, or that's a question. I'm asking it sincerely. What would you love to see?
Before we jump into that question, because I love the questions and all the creative questions that are emerging, I just wanted to invite us for a moment of pause, and let's just I'm going to read fast, just key concepts or words that you mentioned, and in order for us to imagine what is the opposite, or imagine the change of paradigm that it's needed, there are certain assumptions that we need to clear from our head. The first one is that when we talk about neo-colonialism, yes, there is this perception that is related to foreigners and not locals. And the truth is, actually, as Randall said, locals, yes, we are part of it. We are part of this disconnection, not just from the people that are coming in, but also from our own country, right? And our own local rural communities. It's not the same people from the city that connecting into the rural communities, or Picuas, that is the people, mestizo, or people that are not indigenous, with indigenous communities. And also it goes even before that, my ancestors are Chorotegas, and Chorotegas is an indigenous community from Guanacaste. And the truth is, back in the story of times, the Chorotegas used to come from the Mayans, and they went down away from war, but actually they came into Costa Rica and certain parts of Nicaragua, basically saying either you let me live here or I kill you.
They were colonial.
So they were also part of like this, taking land from other people. So yes, I can see the limiting stories of our ancestors manifesting into the concept, and more than just saying who is a neo-colonialist, I think it's so important to describe and bring like a collective concept of it, so we can now, in a common language, like in a common agreement of what does it mean and what are their characteristics, either taking advantage, taking resources, not sharing, not connecting, right? So again, the other side of the question then is how we can cultivate, as Diane said, what can we cultivate what we would love to see happening? What is the other side? And I really love that the way we could offer solutions is there is like in innovation, there is this idea of falling in love of the issue or the problem. Why falling in love with this? Not because I love that it's happening, but actually because I want to understand what, like how did this happen and how is it affecting who, and understanding that it's affecting us all, but equally, even though even the people that is actually doing these actions of extracting resources and not being reciprocated, it's being hurt at the same time. So I will invite us to fall in love with this, issue in a way to really dig into what does other people think, what does my neighbors think, what does my family think, what does like other organizations that I connect with think about this, and then how can we bring up these conversations into creative questions. So I wrote down 2 creative questions that you mentioned. How can we be indigenous of the earth? And how can we make learning the language easier and more possible for foreigners, especially elderly? And the beauty of connecting with these creative questions is that instead of just giving one strategy, one solution, it is opening us up to a realm of possibilities and a realm of potential, right? So yes, I want to invite you to answer to Diane questions, and also if you have another creative question of how can we address this in a way that we can search for other strategies, I invite you to also share your questions in.
I'm just going to do a time check. We only have about 10 minutes left of this, and then we're going to close the space for lunch.
Yes.
And so,
in summary, if there are any creative questions related to how can we address this, or if there is strategies that you think, actual solutions that you think could bring us closer to the shift that we need.
I'm happy to share some of what we've been doing in our space over the last year and 4 months. One is prioritizing that English and Spanish is always spoken in the space. So if there are Spanish speakers that we're translating so that everyone can be included in the conversation. Pretty much every event that we have, the main voice of the event is a Costa Rican. Yeah. So we also do events that all the proceeds of the event go towards local families building or fixing up their homes. So those are different ways that we support and like really prioritize like what to like, especially from Press de León, there's so many movers, so many makers, so many artists that have so many gifts. And so how can we use our space as open doors to amplify their voices and their gifts and let them share them, acting as a bridge between communities and just being there to show up and just to be friends and family. Like when we were talking about workers yesterday, I was sharing with someone, anytime I make cacao, I make it enough for everyone in the house. And even those that are working on construction or in the yard, like we all stop, come into a circle and just share what we're grateful for, share what we, you know, whatever's moving through, like how am I feeling, you know, like what's moving through my body. And I think it's just, it's so much, it can be so much simpler than we make it out to be. It's just like a place to hear each other.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Love that. Thomas! Yay, Thomas!
Hello! I had to restart twice, but restart is also, there's a meaning, I think, to restart.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is what we did 3 years ago when we came to Costa Rica, and I live a lot of time on raw food since 25 years, which keeps me young and vital. And that's why we came here, because we wanted to build a nice farm and yeah, also help to develop the consciousness of the people around us, also here where we live right now. And we found us in a situation where we lived only with ticos around us and had to manage, had to work out plans, how we can work with them. And so we are still in this process to connect with them. And I think because we lived very close to them, we integrated very fast. So there were no other tourists or English-speaking person there. And we know, or I know what Jason said, that some come here just to their pension. But what happens then? Often they get ill. And then maybe they look for alternative methods. And they see it here in the market. Costa Rica has so nice energy. When they look and they go to the market, they see a detox and they see a lot of offers. So I think this is also an option to bring these into the boat to get more conscious. So they get more conscious with their body, what the body needs, like more energy, vitalizing the body. And if somebody vitalizes its body, then our head works different. And then we think of, oh, wow, interesting. How can we increase this energy in other bodies? And even if you are here in pension. So the question also for us is, thank you also to Diana, how to address these people to make good offers, to bring them here, to show them the jungle. That's what we discussed yesterday. So we are, we also love to build this bridge. And what I see now from this weekend is that if we come together, talk and exchange, it's much easier than alone to do this. So it's very important to connect. So thank you very much for your help.
I would just love, Thomas, before we close here, I would love for you to share something that you're grateful for from this weekend with us and that you're taking away.
Well, a lot of things. First of all, to see you all and that you shared your consciousness and also your experience. So with all the persons talking here, we have more than 20 years experience in the project, Costa Rica experience. Also, I think for me, there was a lot of things covered which are important right now. So that's for us. And I think also for other attendees. So there I'm very grateful for. And it feels like, also the name, I'm also very happy. The Recreation Incubator Hub. So it's like not half. It's so this is the.
Yeah, we're grateful for you, Thomas.
Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas.
Perfect, Thomas.
Okay, we have a few
Support the
more.
little chickens to good life. And so this is what feels very good for now, and also in our ongoing processes to connect with you. And it feels good. And I think now I have a better structure to go on and prioritize our next steps here on our farm. So thank you very much.
Amazing, thank you. And I just wanted to give that opportunity because we'll be doing a closing circle that will not be part of the online event. So thank you. All right. We have about
4 minutes. 4 minutes. So I would love to close again, thanking a lot all of you for expressing and being open to have this conversation. I want to keep having the conversation, right? Because this is so important to talk about, and for us to do this transition that we need. The first thing is to communicate and to get like commonalities into it in order for us to walk together into this transition. And just to answer what Diana asked about us ticos, what would us love to see happening? I would say I would love to open spaces for generosity and reciprocity among people that live in a common place. Doesn't really matter if they're foreigners, locals, indigenous or not. What I would love is to bring this intention and request for generosity and reciprocity, and to remind us all that we have a lot of different resources, not just like financial, but knowledge, contacts, connections, and ideas, and so on. So I would love to invite us all to be generous and also to ensure reciprocity for every action that we take.
From my side, so one of the most painful things that was mentioned was displacement. And this is a typical phenomenon of gentrification. And for me, one of the biggest issues. So I would invite, what I would like as a Costa Rican is seeing the foreign community sincerely asking how can we together counteract the displacement of the locals. I mean, it's great that you buy land and that the local families make some money, but how can we prevent them from just like going away from the community? You know, what kind of activities can we do inside the community, partnerships, businesses together? What kind of incentives do you give to your employees or your contractors? So basically thinking really hard and with heart, how can my presence here help the locals to stay local? And how can we collaborate to do stuff that benefits both of us? Like if you talk to simple Costa Rican rurals, they are, really thirsty of ideas and opportunities of what to do. Like they're going from a very difficult financial situation in most cases, and they really want to succeed in life, as we all do, right? And you guys bring a lot of creativity and ideas, perspective, potentially capital, potentially land, and all of that can become great opportunities for the local community. And the shyness that one of you talked about of reaching out because of the barrier languages, for a simple Costa Rican, triple that. Like they've lived in this little village their entire life, and suddenly these kind of like flashy, human being that seems so big and great and seems to have everything figured out comes here, like they won't feel like, oh, I'm just gonna go talk to him or her, you know. So I would ask you to, you know, like overcome your shyness and really try to establish a relationship. For the most part, people in the rural areas are beautiful people, and they're really looking for an opportunity. So instead of thinking, how can I prevent paying Social Security, and how can I pay the least amount, and how can I really, you know, make the most for me, go with this attitude of how can we thrive together in this, and how can I put the bridge to connect to these local communities. And I'm sure it will be full of challenges. I don't think that we're here for an easy task, but I do think that we're here in a potentially the most rewarding thing we could do, you know. And I am a true believer that integrating our cultures in this piece of paradise could, you know, like make our life so joyous. So that's my invitation. And yeah, and maybe in one of the follow-up sessions, we can bring this topic back and see what ideas we've had.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you guys so
Bye-bye.
much. Just really welcome and needed. And like all of our presentations, it really just can't stop here. We can't let Chronos time and the need to get to the lunch stop this conversation, not even really pause it. Like, keep writing, keep coming up with your solutions. And again, let's go into the private group we've created. I'm going to create a post on this topic, and please comment. Just list your solutions. If you want to rant and talk about whatever other perspectives you have on the situation, that's cool too. But let's like really make an intention. Any solutions you wrote down, let's fill that post with comments of what we got in our mind. Because when we bring all these ideas together and we read each other's ideas, we have a better chance of unifying into a force that can make effect.